Hello there, it's Mr. Singleton again, one of the Associate Directors of Science for Outward Academy. This lesson is part of the cells topic and it's just about blood and what we call blood vessels. These are things that carry blood around. Again, this is just the specification, just helps you know what AQA want you to understand, what's going to be covered in the lesson, and also just gives you some hints about how questions might be asked, etc. So, last lesson we looked at the heart. So I want you to think back to the structures of the heart, think about the chambers in the heart, and then the blood vessels which pumps deoxygenated blood to the lungs, and then the one which pumps oxygenated blood to the rest of the body. So all you need to do is write this down on a piece of paper or think about it in your head for a couple of minutes, see if you can come up with the answers. If you're using your book, then please use your book and write them in your book as a starter. I will give you 2 minutes. Off you go. Okay, try and remember that va, 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 va. That might be able to help you a little bit. You've got 30 more seconds. Answer time. The chambers of the heart, I'd let you off with atrium and ventricle, but there's the left atrium, the left ventricle, right atrium and right ventricle. The blood vessel which pumps deoxygenated blood to the lungs is the pulmonary artery. Remember that word, pulmonary, meaning lungs basically. And the blood vessels which pumps the oxygenated blood to the rest of the body is the aorta. That's that main one. Today then we are going to look at blood and blood vessels. Our challenge and aspire, the challenge is to explain the role of blood. So why do we have blood? What does it do? And our aspire is to describe the function and structure of blood vessels. So just a couple of blood facts for you. These are not part of the spec, but quite interesting. So you have about 5.6 litres of blood. That's about 3 bottles of pop, big bottles of pop in your body. Your heart will beat about 35 million times a year. And if you ever give blood, if you donate blood, they'll take about half a litre from you, about a pint of blood every time. So this is blood, this is what it's made up of. Now blood is a tissue. So if you can think back to our previous lesson or lessons, a tissue is a group of cells. So this is going to have a group of cells in it which work together to do a certain job. The tissue is made of something called plasma, which is the liquid part of the blood. And then it has red blood cells in, white blood cells, and platelets. We will come on to white blood cells later on in a lot more detail when we talk about infections and response. But you need to know what they do at this point in time. So plasma, if you look on that in that test tube, plasma makes up over half of the blood. That's the liquid part. Blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets are less than 1%, and then the rest is red blood cells, which is why white blood is that reddish colour. Please do not think for 1 second that your blood is ever blue. Just because your veins are blue, your blood will not be blue. So just quick progress check on that last slide, see what you can remember, because they are really important. They're often asked in exams. Is blood a cell, tissue, or an organ? And then what is inside of blood? What are those 4 parts of the blood? I'll give you a quick 30 seconds, see if you can come up with it. Okay, so blood is a tissue, if you think back to that previous slide, and it's made up of plasma, red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. Now we need to know what each of those parts of the blood. So plasma, that's that yellowy part that covers about 55% of the blood content, and its jobs are, and you need to know all 4 of these, it carries carbon dioxide from the organs back to the heart and into the lungs. It will carry a waste product called urea from the liver to the kidneys, and from there the kidneys will make urine. It also transports water around, and it will transport hormones and digested food. So things like if we want to get glucose around the body, it moves in the plasma. AQA are a bit annoying with this because they'll say plasma transports, and they'll pick 2 of them, and you need to know the other 2. So they'll say plasma transports carbon dioxide and urea. What other 2 things does it transport? So you have to remember water and hormones and digested food. Okay, so just a quick progress check again. In each of these rows, A, B, and C, which of the things are not carried by the plasma? So on row A, which one is not carried by plasma? Is it glucose, carbon dioxide, oxygen, water, or urea? So hopefully you've chosen oxygen, because the rest of them are transported by plasma. So let's have a look at B. Which one is not transported by by plasma, sorry. Water, insulin, urea, oxygen, or digested food. So the tricky one here is that word insulin. Insulin is a hormone, so it definitely carries around insulin. Hopefully, again, you went for oxygen. And the last one here, we've got carbon dioxide, hormones, starch, fiber, urea. Hopefully we know it's not carbon dioxide, because it does carry around carbon dioxide, and it carries around hormones, and it carries around urea. However, back in the previous lessons we talked about starch, and it has to be digested. So it does not carry around starch, because starch would have to be digested to get into the blood. And it won't carry around fibre, because fibre is not digested either. So the answer for C It does not carry around starch or fibre. Okay, on to red blood cells. I think most people know these by now. Red blood cells are the parts which are responsible for carrying around oxygen, and the oxygen goes from the lungs to the organs and every single cell in your body because it needs it for respiration. They have this really special design, red blood cells. They don't have a nucleus. They're probably the only cell in the human body to not have a nucleus, and so that allows them to carry more oxygen around. And they are bioconcave, so they look a bit like a kidney bean. So they go in the middle, like squashed in the middle, and that's just to give them a larger surface area, and that allows them again to carry more oxygen. So they're packed with this protein called hemoglobin, and that helps them to carry around oxygen. Hemoglobin is made up of iron. It's got iron inside it. That's why you need iron in your diet to help your red blood cells. White blood cells, at this point in time, you only need to know that they kill pathogens, so they kill diseases. They can do this a couple of ways, by engulfing them or by producing antibodies. If you know at this point in time that they fight diseases, then that's perfect. Platelets are really, really important. Okay, if you cut yourself, then thankfully you don't bleed out. You don't keep bleeding forevermore and lose those 5 or 6 litres of blood because of these little platelets. These platelets clot your blood around where the wound is, and it forms that scab. Now that scab does 2 things. It stops all your blood from leaving your body, which is a good thing, and it also stops any more bacteria or viruses getting into your body. So it stops infection as well. So platelets, little small parts of cells, small proteins, and they clot your blood. Okay, so that is the role of blood. It carries around oxygen in the red blood cells. It can fight diseases. It will carry around carbon dioxide and digested food and hormones to where they need to go in the plasma, and it can clot your blood to stop you from bleeding out. So that is your challenge done already. So now onto a Google quiz. So if you open up your Google quiz, you can do the first couple of questions there. Off you go. Okay, you got 1 more minute to complete your questions. Okay, so let's move on. These are some of the blood vessels. So two of the blood vessels that you need to know about are arteries and veins. So these are two pictures, one of an artery and one of a vein. I just want you to have a look at them and see if you can come up with any differences between the two, because these are the only differences you really need to know. So have a look on the outside and on the inside, so you can come up with some differences between these two. Some are very obvious. Please don't go for the colour of them. I'll give you 30 seconds to come up with a list of differences. Okay, you got 30 more seconds. Have a look at the thickness of certain layers. Have a look at the artery and what layers in there, and in the vein and what's in there that's not in the artery. Right, so you should have come up with that arteries have thicker walls and they have more muscular walls, and that is because they need to pump blood at very, very high pressure. If you hopefully never have this, or if anything ever happens, if you cut an artery, then it would spray around about 9 feet without touching the ground. So forensic scientists use this and they can see what's being cut if there's sprays on the wall of blood and things like that. So arteries carry blood at really high pressure because they're coming away from the heart, and that heart being pumped at that left hand side comes out at very high pressure because it's got to get all around the body. Arteries also have this thing called a smaller lumen. Now, a lumen is just a scientific name in biology for a hole. So the hole that the blood travels through is called a lumen. Okay, so arteries have a smaller lumen, which means that more blood can get through quicker, creating that higher pressure which the arteries need. Veins also, hopefully you saw that veins have something called a valve. A valve that works very similar to like your bike tire. It stops the air coming out, while in the blood, it stops the blood going backwards and going back down your back down your leg. Arteries don't need these valves because they are going at a much higher pressure, so they never need it. But as the veins are trying to push the blood back up to your heart from the bottom of your leg, it needs veins to stop it all going back down. Okay, so they're the three main differences between arteries and veins. Now there is one more blood vessel that you need to know about, and that is this thing called a capillary. So what happens is the blood flows out from the heart in an artery, in this case the aorta, and it will travel, and it needs to get to every part of your body. Now, if it goes at really high pressure in that artery, it's not going to have time to get rid of the oxygen and the glucose that blood is carrying and drop it off to cells. So it goes into these thinner capillaries, or thinner tubes called capillaries, which are made of a single celled layer. So they're only one cell thick, and that thin layer then allows the oxygen to move out really easily and the glucose to move out much easier. And then that capillary will attach to a vein, and the vein will take all the waste products from that cell, the carbon dioxide that's going to move back into the blood, and it will take it back to the heart to go to the lungs to get oxygenated again. So the route of this goes artery into a capillary and then back into a vein, to your heart, to your lungs, back into an artery again. Okay, so capillaries, one cell thick, very small lumen, and that just slows the blood right down so that all the oxygen and glucose can come out of that blood, and then the blood can pick up all the carbon dioxide and any waste products. So here's your capillary, here's the oxygen coming out and the nutrients coming out that the cells want. The carbon dioxide and the waste goes back in, and it goes to the vein. One cell thick, very small lumen. Here's a quick progress checker. So I just want you to have a look. You can do this on a whiteboard, or you can do it on a scrap piece of paper. Okay, so just number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then write if it's A for artery, V for vein, or C for capillary. So number 1, thick elastic tissue so the wall can stretch. Is that an artery, a vein, or capillary? Number 2, a narrow lumen. Is that an artery, a vein, or capillary? Remember, lumen meaning that little hole. Might be 2 of them. Valves to prevent backflow is number 3. Is that an artery, vein, or capillary? Thinner walls to lower pressure. Now, do you want that in an artery, vein, or capillary? The wall is one cell thick, and the thick muscular layer to prevent any rupture. I've talked through them, so I'll give you 30 seconds to have a quick think and write them down. Okay, let's go for the answers. So thick elastic tissues is an artery because it needs to be able to stretch. A narrow lumen is a capillary, but you could put artery as well because it does have a smaller lumen. Valves is a vein. Thin muscular walls due to low pressure is a vein again. Walls are one cell thick, that's a capillary, and then thick muscular walls is an artery. So I want you to do this in your book. Draw the table out, put the blood vessel in, artery, vein, capillary, and then draw a quick diagram of what a cross section would look like. So has it got a thick wall or a thin wall? Has it got a wide lumen or a small lumen? And then how is it adapted? If you want to put this straight onto a revision card, then that's fine. I'll give you a good while. I'll give you 5 minutes to do this. Off you go. Okay, you got 1 more minute left. Right, let's go through the answers. So a vein, you should have just done a wider lumen, the hole in the middle bit, and then thinner walls, and then the capillary, very, very small lumen, and then 1 cell thick. So how is it adapted? So an artery, thick, muscular, and elastic walls to withstand high pressure, and it has a small lumen. The vein, thinner walls, large lumen, so it's a nice low pressure, but it has valves. Please remember that one's quite key, and that stops the backflow of blood. And then the capillary, very thin walls, only 1 cell thick, so oxygen can diffuse across and carbon dioxide can diffuse back into the blood. I'll give you 2 minutes to write any bits in that you want to write in. Right, so Google quiz time. Go and answer some of the questions about blood vessels. You should have everything down there that you need. I'll give you 4 minutes to answer answer the rest of the questions. Okay, so that is the challenge and aspire done. We know the parts of blood, there's 4 parts and what each part does, and you know the 3 blood vessels and how they are adapted to do their job. Revision card time again. So if you're making revision cards, here's some of the information that would be great on there. So blood is a tissue that is made of white blood cells which fight diseases, red blood cells which carry oxygen, plasma which carries glucose, hormones and carbon dioxide, platelets which causes the bloods to clot, and then the 3 main blood vessels you need to know. Arteries, they carry blood away from the heart. They have a thin lumen and thick elastic walls. Veins carry blood to the heart. They have a wider lumen and valves which stop the backflow. And then capillaries which have thin walls to allow diffusion. If you're writing those down, I'll let you put them onto a revision card. I'll give you 3 more minutes. If you need to, pause the video and then write them in. Okay, and there is a set of exam questions just to help you with this lesson. So if you want to complete those, print them off and complete them and hand them to your teacher or put them into your book. That'd be great. This is the end of the lesson. Well done, and hopefully see you on the next lesson.